Welcome to Just the Discs. We talk about Blu-rays here. My name is Brian, and so this is part 2 of my best/favorite Blu-rays of 2023. And I want to reiterate at the top, my qualifications for best/favorite has a lot more to do with the movie itself and what I thought of the movie than necessarily the entire package. Sometimes the package will be great. You'll get lots of extras. Sometimes you don't get any, but I'm just excited to get maybe a new scan of a movie that I really like or what have you. So, be fair warned, that's kind of how I'm doing this. And, some of these movies I just find really interesting, and I don't think they're going to get talked about in other best of videos necessarily because they are more maybe interesting movies than... the releases are good, but I just feel like certain things end up on these lists, and I certainly have a lot of crossover with a lot of other folks, but hopefully there'll be some stuff on here that haven't been mentioned in other lists. And I'll start with one that has no extra features at all, but I'm very excited to get a brand new 2K scan from the Interpositive, and that is Walter Hill's film Last Man Standing from 1996. This is from Shout Studios, and of course, ostensibly a reworking of the Yojimbo / Fistful of Dollars sort of storyline, but transplanted to the gangster prohibition era, West Texas. And the cast in this one is spectacular. Bruce Willis is highlighting, followed by folks like Bruce Dern, Christopher Walken, David Patrick Kelly, a real Walter Hill regular, William Sanderson, Michael Imperioli from Sopranos, Ned Eisenberg, Leslie Mann shows up, Lynn Shay shows up, Patrick Kilpatrick. It opens with the guitar riffs from this great Ry Cooder score. Another thing that Walter Hill did a lot was collaborate with composer Ry Cooder. Just really great guitar scores. It is both antiquated and modern, and sometimes it is electric and sort of acoustic-y, twangy, electric twangy like you're used to with him, but there's some parts of it that feel a little bit more modern, which I kind of like. So Willis's character, John Smith, ends up in Jericho, which is a little town maybe 50 miles from the border in, like I said, West Texas. And it's dirt streets, ramshackle buildings, not on any map. And he immediately gets himself sort of in trouble with one of two local bootlegging gangs that sort of run this small town. One is an Italian gang, which he gets himself in trouble with, and the other is I'm trying to remember how this goes. There's the Italian gang, and then there's the other gang that is Irish. I think he gets himself in trouble with is it the Irish gang first? I think so. They just mess up his car, tell him to get out of town, and he does not take kindly to that. He's like he's sort of that man with no name kind of character, a wandering samurai type, and he drives a Ford Model A, and like I said, he is accosted by the goons. They mess up his car. He immediately goes to the sheriff, played by Bruce Dern, to complain. They actually tell him, go complain to the sheriff. We don't care, because they know he's not going to do anything, because he's sort of on the payroll of both gangs or one or the other at certain times. And so anyway, Bruce Dern isn't going to do anything, and kind of basically tells him, you should just leave, dude. And of course, Bruce Dern's character is not going to do that. He goes to the local tavern where William Sanderson runs things, and he gives him the layout of the two gangs, and he immediately sort of goes to work trying to ingratiate himself a little with one of them, but also kind of not ingratiating himself, kind of being the guy that you expect him to be, the sort of tough guy. And eventually, I love the line that Bruce Dern gives him. He's like, you should get yourself a firearm. And of course, he does have firearms. He has 245 automatics that he uses. And this movie kind of goes from that. It's like, to me, a lot like he did with Streets of Fire, where Walter Hill takes film noir and musicals and future sci-fi, Blade Runner, whatever the heck you want to call it, and mashes them all together. And I feel like he does that a lot, where he just puts different genres together in this great way. And this one, like I said, it feels like it's both a Western and a gangster movie and a little bit of like John Woo action, because it just really gets going and has some crazy action stuff. People jumping through the air, shooting guns at each other. And it's really a gem. The new scan looks good, better than the previous Blu-ray that had come out. And I was really happy to get this one. I'm a big Walter Hill fan in general, so kind of a completist when it comes to most of his stuff. And so Last Man Standing, high recommend. Another one from Shout Factory / Scream Factory, I think in this case, is Endangered Species. And this is from, I want to say, 82. And this is a new 2023 2K scan from the Interpositive. A fascinating movie. This is an Alan Rudolph film. Alan Rudolph, sort of a protege of Altman, and did a lot of great, character pieces, like things like Choose Me, and he's just a fascinating filmmaker. And this is more of a sci-fi thriller, and it's really interesting because it's about... it's got a good cast too. Robert Urich, Jo Beth Williams, Paul Dooley, Hoyt Axton, Peter Coyote, and others that I recognize. But basically, Robert Urich is an ex-cop who's just got out of rehab for alcohol, and he brings his daughter. He wants to move west, and he ends up in this small town, which happens to have a newspaper run by an old friend of his, played by Paul Dooley, and a cattle baron type played by Hoyt Axton, who sort of runs the town, and Jo Beth Williams, who's just been elected sheriff of the town. And they're dealing with this mystery where these cows keep showing up with their heads. They're kind of cut up in this way that they're like sliced in half almost in some parts, and they have holes in them, and it just is there's no tracks around them. It's unclear what's happening. And so could it be aliens? Is it some other kind of conspiracy? We don't know. And it takes a while to figure out, but Urich's old cop instincts kick in, and he starts to get involved, and people start dying, and it's fascinating movie. And I had watched it, I guess, years and years ago, but I did not remember it at all, and so I had no clue what was coming. This has a new audio commentary with Lee Gambin, which is cool to have, and just a very interesting release from Shouts and Scream. And then Criterion. I didn't cover some of these, and I should have in my previous Blu-rays. One of my favorite movies came out this year on a nice Blu-ray from Criterion, and that's Targets, Peter Bogdanovich's debut feature from 1968, and truly just fantastic. Still incredibly resonant today about and influenced by mass shootings. At the time this film came out, Charles Whitman was the big one. Obviously now we have a lot more than that in in the world, but it's all about an aging horror actor or horror icon type actor played by Boris Karloff in one of my favorite performances. He plays Byron Orlock, which is a great sort of stand-in name for him. And he's being courted by a young writer, played by Bogdanovich himself, who wants to get him to star in his new movie, but he's basically like, my time's past. Horror isn't anything anymore. Horror is, this kind of shooting, just horrible violence that happens in the world, and he feels out of date. And so that plot line is one, and then we have Tim O'Kelly, who's a really incredible actor that you don't see in a lot of movies, who plays the guy who kind of loses it and kills his family and then starts picking people off from various places around the area that they live, and it sort of coalesces in this great climax at a drive-in theater that I love. And so I was really excited. I wanted a 4K, but hey, I'm just happy to get this on a Blu-ray. It's a new 4K digital master. It ports over the commentary. There's a new interview with Linklater, interview with Polly Platt at the AFI, and a nice booklet, and it's great. I should have definitely included that. And another one that I should have included is Chilly Scenes of Winter, which Joan Micklin Silver's film from 1979, and truly a favorite, one that really showcases a a great performance from John Hurd. And, between this and Cutter's Way, which has gotten a nice release from Fun City, I think last year, one of my favorites of last year. This is another one that will let you know how great John Hurd is. He's just a really great actor. So Joan Micklin Silver, one of my favorite filmmakers, doing this cult item sort of about a guy, Charles, played by John Hurd, who is sort of pining for this woman that he had this thing with, played by Mary Beth Hurt, but she's married, and he's still kind of obsessed with her, and it gets a little creepy in parts, and it's odd because he has, like, his mother's played by Gloria Graham, and she's dating a new guy played by Kenny McMillan, and that's a whole side plot, and he has this friend played by Peter Riegert, who's an unemployed jacket salesman that lives with him and his sister in their house, and it's really hard to explain, but I just know that a lot of folks that have seen it for the first time have really liked it. And this is a new 4K, sort of restored 4K digital transfer, so I think it's different than the previous Blu-ray from Twilight Time in that sense, and it does have... it does not have the commentary from, I want to say Joan Micklin Silver herself does a commentary on the other Blu-ray. They didn't license that, unfortunately, but they have some other nice features with Griffin Dunn, Mark Metcalf, and Amy Robinson. It was their production company that made this movie. Anyway, it's great, and I was remiss in not including this in my favorite Blu-rays of 2023. It is definitely that. All right, let's see. We will try Force of Evil. This is one that got a nice new restoration from Kino this year. This is a great film noir starring the wonderful John Garfield, and Thomas Gomez is really good in this. This is a Scorsese favorite, and there is the introduction by Scorsese, which I think goes back to even like the VHS tape of this movie. He's been a fan of this for a long time. Has a great speech that he gives about, Scorsese talks about a speech that Thomas Gomez gives about dying a little bit at a time. I've talked about this before, like In Your Hands, and it's a great bit, but very much seemingly like an influence on Mean Streets, kind of not exactly the same kind of thing, but, John Garfield perfectly cast as Joe Morse, a lawyer whose connection to a ruthless racketeer has nearly destroyed his sense of morality. His participation in a rigged numbers racket could prove disastrous for his high-strung brother. That's Thomas Gomez, whose small-time bank stands to go broke when the rigged numbers pay off. So it's a great noir setup. Screenplay by the wonderful and written and directed by the wonderful Abraham Polanski, blacklisted fella, but one of the quintessential noirs, and really nice to get a good-looking 4K restoration from Paramount and UCLA archives. And it has a commentary with Imogen Sarah Smith, one of my favorites, especially for noir. She's fantastic. And that introduction by Scorsese. So really nice release of Force of Evil from Kino. Then we have a discovery, in a sense, and that is The Apprenticeship of Duddy Kravitz. This is a Fun City edition, one of their last releases of the year. Really nice slipcase for this one. This is another wonderful showcase film for the delightful Richard Dreyfuss. This is from 1974, so pre-Jaws, post-American Graffiti, but it's a really fascinating film. Richard Dreyfuss is an irresistible young Jewish man in 1948 Montreal. He's driven by an insatiable desire to be a somebody, and he somehow works his way into our hearts even as he cheats and schemes and contrives to buy a large parcel of land. He uses the girl who loves him, forges checks, lies. He is enormously proud of himself because of it. Those around him are tremendously disgusted. We are torn. There's a little bit of Duddy Kravitz in everyone. Duddy. New 4K restoration from its 35 Interpositive. Hats off again to Fun City for always doing these restorations and getting this particular movie hasn't got a great footprint in terms of releases. It's not gotten a lot of release. VHS is the last one. Maybe it had a DVD, but I don't think so. So anyway, this film has been a bit underseen. It's from director Ted Kotcheff, who did like North Dallas 40, and he did a lot of interesting stuff. I'm actually a big fan of Ted Kotcheff. Wake and Fright, some other things like that. But this is really interesting. It has Randy Quaid, a very young Randy Quaid, as well as Michelle Langto and Joseph Wiseman, Denholm Elliott. He hires a out of over the hill director played by Denholm Elliott to help him make like bar mitzvah movies at the time, but they're artful movies, and he's trying to raise money that way. He really wants to own this land around this lake, and so he's doing everything he can to do it. And like it says, he kind of goes into some darker territory in terms of what he's willing to do and who he's willing to step on in order to get to where he wants. And it has a powerful and impactful sort of ending that will definitely sit with you. You know, it's a really interesting movie, and one that isn't getting talked about enough. Has a new recorded audio commentary by Adam Naiman, very nice audio commentary track, as well as a booklet essay by Nathan Holmes that is included with this as well. So high recommend for this. This is a good, unknown 70s movie for Dreyfuss fans. That's Apprenticeship of Duddy Kravitz. Let me do a couple things here. I've got some new stuff from Imprint, and these just happened to come in right when I was sort of figuring this stuff out, so I really want to include these. First, just a standalone disc. This one is called The Man in Half Moon Street, and this is really a neat one. This is a noir. Could have been part of one of their noir box sets, but it's got sort of a supernatural twist to it. A scientist discovers that he can live forever by receiving gland transplants for every 10 years. Unfortunately, the unwilling donors must be killed for him to survive, something that doesn't bother the scientist until he falls in love. And Helen Walker is the only one I recognize in this, but it's based on the play by Barry Lyndon. It has an audio commentary by Tim Lucas, which always means to me, oh, that must be an interesting movie. And you can see why he's into it, because, like I said, it has that sort of sci-fi Jekyll and Hyde, but not quite. So it's a much different noir vibe than I'm used to, and it's just one that it's from 45. It just sort of stood out as interesting to me, and it looks pretty good in this Blu-ray. I don't know if it's had a Blu-ray before. Maybe it has. I'll have to double check that, but anyway, this one came in and I was intrigued by it, and I do recommend The Man in Half Moon Street. But more than that, the big one is this new, box set, directed by Sidney Lumet, Volume 1. Now, I'm a huge Sidney Lumet fan, one of my favorite filmmakers. And so this is interesting because it's a lot of it, basically all of it, is reissues, but they're adding some things here that make this a very interesting set, for sure. So the films that are included here in this first set, The Pawnbroker, The Group, The Deadly Affair, Child's Play, The Offense, and Serpico. Now, Serpico is tricky because that got a nice 4K from Kino this year, which I should have mentioned in my 4Ks, but I didn't. It's definitely worth getting. So that's just a Blu-ray here. But the rest of these, like I said, they've had some form of release, but mostly bare bones. And in some cases, they're still bare bones. But anyway, let me just go through this. The big one here is, one of the big ones is The Pawnbroker, which is a really early one for him. Great performance by Rod Steiger. A World War II Nazi death camp survivor takes refuge in misery and bitter condemnation of humanity in Harlem, New York, while managing a pawn shop subjected to an endless parade of prostitutes, pimps, and thieves. Really great performance from Mr. Steiger in this one. This is 1080p presentation from a 2K scan, but it includes an audio commentary with writer-producer Pfeff Sutton, writer NPR commentator Mark Legan, and author film historian C. Courtney Joyner, as well as the Guardian interview with Rod Steiger, an audio recording from 1992. And it includes The Cinema of Pilpul, a Talmudic view of early Holocaust cinema, a video essay, and then Safe Within Myself, Remembering Rod Steiger, interview with the stepdaughter of Steiger, Claudia Myers-Schunden. That's on the first disc, but the second disc, it's part one of a new documentary called One Step Further, Becoming Lumet. This is from Ballyhoo Pictures, and it's a feature documentary detailing the first half of his career. And it's cool because it's only about 57 minutes, but it goes deep into his television beginnings and talks about really basically every film up to the group. So in terms of some of the back end stuff in this, I guess we'll have to wait for volume 2 to see that stuff. But it does do some really great, if slightly brief, in-depth examinations of each of the films leading up to. So you have the Pawnbroker and the group both covered here. And so that's really neat. That's just great. I love that. I'm a big fan of The Group, which is the next movie that we get here. And this has been issued by Kino before, but now this one has a commentary. And I don't know if it's this. It says high definition from a 2K scan. I'm not sure if that's different than the Kino one, but this new commentary with film critic Adrian Martin is very good and worth the re-release of it, basically. Because I know that the Kino was bare bones, and I was digging the commentary track. This is a really fascinating story, like an epic one that I found through Danny Perry's books. It was listed as a cult movie, and it's about a group of 8 young women from, I want to say the Vassar College, and they face the inevitable pressures to sand the rough edges off their personalities and to surrender their independence to the men in their lives and the institutions they represent. And it's a killer cast. The girls are Candice Bergen, Joan Hackett, Elizabeth Hartman, Shirley Knight, Joanna Pettit, Mary Robin Redd, Jessica Walter, Catherine Whittles, and the men, who are just all terrible, Larry Hagman, Hal Holbrook, Richard Mulligan, pretty awful guys. But this is an epic. It's like 2.5 hours long, but it's just, I don't know, there's soap opera quality too that I really like. And so I was happy to see this get a nice representation in this set. Then we have The Deadly Affair, and this one is a British secret agent, Charles Dobbs, is puzzled by the sudden suicide of a man he recently investigated. The suicide seems contrary to his own findings, and Dobbs questions the recent widow in an effort to understand the man's state of mind. When the Foreign Office tells Dobbs to drop the inquiry, he persists, even enlisting a retired investigator when he turns up further disturbing evidence. And this has music by Quincy Jones. It has Simone Signoret, Maximilian Schell, James Mason is the star. It's a fascinating sort of spy movie. No extras on this one. I feel like this has gotten a release from somebody. 1080p presentation of a 2K scan, but I remember enjoying it. It's been a long time since I've seen it. Now here's one I haven't seen. This has only come out from Olive Films, and had nothing on it. This disc does have something. This is Child's Play from 1972. At an exclusive boys' school, a new gym teacher is drawn into a feud between 2 older instructors and discovers that everything at the school is not quite as staid, tranquil, and harmless as it seems. Now, this will tie into a movie I'm going to talk about a little later, kind of. It has a new audio commentary by Howard S. Berger and Designing Sydney, interview with production designer Philip Rosenberg. Those are 2 new features now included on that disc. And then we have The Offense. This has definitely gotten a release from Kino for sure, and maybe others. But we got a lot of stuff included on this one. This one's pretty stacked. A burnout British police detective finally snaps whilst interrogating a suspected child molester. That is, of course, played by the great Sean Connery. Not included in this set is Lumet's film The Hill, which I think was their first collaboration. The Hill has come out from somebody. Now I'm forgetting who at this point. But this is a fascinating one for sure. Audio commentary by film historians Lee Pfeiffer, Tony Latino, and Paul Scrabo. Sidney Lumet, Childhood Elegy, a video essay by Howard Berger. Interview with second assistant director Michael Stevenson. Interview with composer Harrison Birtwistle. Some of these are older from previous releases. Interview with stage director Christopher Morahan. Interview with assistant art director Chris Burke. Interview with costume designer Evangeline Harrison. Interview with sound mixer Simon Kay. So you got a ton of stuff on The Offense. And then lastly, we have Serpico, of course, and this is just the unfortunately just the movie. You know, the Al Pacino. Frank Serpico is a young New York cop who's appalled to find that his dreams of upholding law are at odds with a force riddled by bribery and corruption. So we all know this movie. A little bit disappointing that they didn't do a 4K of that, but you know, whatever. It's still a really interesting box set and one that I wanted to make sure to mention, and look forward to Volume 2 from Imprint. Next up, we have a couple from Arrow. We'll start with Fighting Back. This is sort of a Death Wish style, vigilante kind of movie starring. Well, it's got a pretty solid cast actually, but Tom Skerritt is leading up the cast. Makes me think of Vigilante, the Robert Forster film, and Streets of Philadelphia are unsafe, but John D'Angelo has a solution. Thieves, pimps, and pushers, beware. He's declaring a personal war on crime. From the director of Alligator and the producer of Death Wish comes Fighting Back. Yeah, Louis Teague directs this. He also did Cujo and other things. Cat's Eye. Tom Skerritt stars as John D'Angelo, a proud husband and father fed up with crime and fear his family endures every day. When his wife, Lisa, Patti LuPone, and elderly mother are both victims of violent attacks, he organizes a team of locals to operate as a neighborhood patrol group. But when the patrol resorts to vigilante tactics, the lines between protection and personal vendetta become blurred, resulting in violence, racism, and corruption. This is a fascinating one, and one that had a VHS release, but I don't even think had a DVD. You never know about like a made on demand, but this one was kind of hard to see for a while. It would pop up on streaming here and there, but had kind of fallen out of visibility. And I think it's an effective, if maybe a little bit problematic in some spots, but I think that's part of its, what appeals to me about the movie is it is kind of challenging in a certain way and does a little more and is a little more complex, I think, than Death Wish in some ways. But yeah, really fascinating movie and great to have this on a nice Arrow Blu-ray. It has Enough is Enough, a new interview with director Louis Teague, Danny Cam, a new interview with camera operator Daniel Nanuzzi, and collector's booklet featuring new writing on the film by Rob Skvarla and Walter Chaw. I'm a big fan of Walter. And a career-spanning interview with director Louis Teague. So really nice new Blu-ray of Fighting Back. This one is from, I want to say 1983. When is this from? 82. So that's Fighting Back. And then this next one is pretty under the radar for a lot of folks, I think. Unmanned, Wittering, and Zygo. Now this is the one that ties back to Child's Play a little bit. This is a film by a guy named John McKenzie, and it stars the great David Hemmings. Boys Will Be Boys in this scathing psychological thriller set within the hidebound and testosterone-charged confines of a remote coastal British private school, produced by and starring David Hemmings. So obviously a very important project to David Hemmings. John Ebony is the idealistic young schoolmaster who arrives at Chantry School for Boys on his first assignment, employed to fill the shoes of his predecessor, Pelham, who has recently been found dead at the bottom of a nearby cliff. Interesting. Taking up residence in a cottage in the school's grounds with his restless young wife, Sylvia. Ebony is eager to make a good impression, but immediately gets off on the wrong foot with his assigned pupils, discovering the boys of class lower 5B minus the perpetually absent Zygo to be an unruly and defiant group. However, they possibly know more about Pelham's demise than the school's headmaster and his fellow staff are letting on. Masterfully shot by cinematographer Jeffrey Unsworth, who shot 2001, and directed by John McKenzie, who did Long Good Friday. This film adaptation of Giles Cooper's classic play is presented on home video for the first time ever. Okay, so this had never had a release. I thought that was the case. I had an old bootleg of this. Unmanned, Wittering, Zygo presents a scathing expose of the kind of environment from which brutish empires are born. So very dark, very chilling in some ways. I'm not going to go any further than that. It includes a brand new audio commentary by Sean Hogan and Kim Newman. Always love to see Kim Newman on a commentary. Brand new appreciation by critic, broadcaster, and cultural historian Matthew Sweet. Unman, Terhue, Libstraub, and Mrs. Ebony. Featurette cast members Michael Howell, Michael Cashman, James Wardropper, and Carolyn Seymour looking back at the movie. Original 1958 recording of Giles Cooper's radio play. That's very cool. Illustrated booklet featuring new writing on the film by Kevin Lyons and Oliver Wake. So very cool to get the first time on home video for Unman, Wittering, and Zygo, and that is from 1971. A couple from Arrow there. Okay, a couple from Umbrella. Now, Red Rock West got a couple Blu-rays this year. This is the best one, I think, because this includes all the features from the previous Blu-ray, which was from, I can't remember. Shoot. I apologize, but it's listed as Region B. It is an all-region disc, and Red Rock West, one of the great neo-noirs of all time. Incredible cast, including Nicolas Cage and, as you can see, Dennis Hopper and Lara Flynn Boyle and J.G. Walsh. And it's just one of those great movies that opens with a guy making a decision to pretend to be somebody he's not, and it gets him into a whole lot of trouble. And Nicolas Cage is that guy, and it's just one of those things where you watch it and it's self-aware in this way that you just love to see it unfold. It's a great movie, and it's just been waiting for Blu-ray. So this also had a really nice limited edition. I didn't go for that. I decided to not get that. This one I got through Amazon. It was a little expensive, but still worth it to me. Includes the commentary with John Dahl, Rick Dahl, and Scott Chestnut. New commentary with Mondo Digital's Nathaniel Thompson. Interview with the editor, Scott Chestnut. Interview with co-editor John Dahl. New The Man from Rhode Island, Life and Times of J.T. Walsh. Video essay by John Harrison, so that's a new thing. And Caged In, host Petros Patsilvis talks Nicolas Cage's performance. So a really nice release of Red Rock West. Highly recommended. Great neo-noir. Another one, shifting gears slightly from that, is Mad Monster Party. Now, this had come out on Blu-ray, but this is a new scan, and it looks great. New 2023 master in correct aspect ratio of 1:85:1, but also includes the alternate full frame 1:33:1. Has a new audio commentary by Rick Goldschmidt, film historian for Rankin Bass Studios. New introduction by Goldschmidt, Making of a Cult Classic 2009 featurette. It's Sheer Animagic 2009 featurette. Groovy Ghouls, the music of Mad Monster Party 2009. Unearthing a Classic 1998 featurette. 2 sing-alongs. It's really great. So they're pulling in all the Blu-ray stuff from the previous releases, and the new scan is fantastic. I mean, this is just a really wonderful stop-motion animation musical with monsters, Dracula and the Invisible Man and Frankenstein, and Boris Karloff voicing some characters, and super goofy, and it become one of my daughter's favorite movies, and I think still kind of is. But I couldn't resist getting a new scan of it from Umbrella. This is another all-region disc, and definitely worth getting if you're a fan of Mad Monster Party, and you should be. Next up, we have from this is Vinegar Syndrome Labs, and one thing I'll say is that obviously they're going to do what they're going to do, but I was really excited when Vinegar Syndrome Labs kicked off this year with Flesh and Fantasy, which is a really great anthology sort of borderline horror film starring Julianne de Vivier, Charles Boyer, Barbara Stanwyck, Edward G. Robinson, and a really great one. It's a trio of tales, and it's really good. Like, I really dug it. Newly scanned in 2K from its 35 dupe negative. Brand new commentary with Barry Forshaw and Kim Newman. Love that. Fate News, or The Dark World of Julianne de Vivier featurette with French film director Christophe Gans, who's a fan. Yeah, it's like a Twilight Zone trilogy. I'm not going to go into the stories. Robert Cummings is in one of them. Robert Benchley, Betty Field. It's really, really solid stuff. So they started the year introducing Vinegar Syndrome Labs, and I was like, oh, cool, they're going to do classic films. And they did about 3. They did Cat Creeps was another one, which is interesting. And I'm forgetting that second one, the Amazon Jungle one. But this is definitely my favorite Vinegar Syndrome Labs release so far, and a really nice scan of it. I hope they come back to the classic stuff. I'm guessing it maybe didn't sell all that well. I might have been a tough sell for the Vinegar Syndrome crowd, but regardless, definitely worth your time. Keep it going here. Keep it going. Okay, from the partner labels, we have the Saragossa Manuscript. This is from Yellow Veil, from Wojciech J. Haas. This is a favorite film of, I believe, Scorsese and Jerry Garcia. And it is set during the Napoleonic Wars. The film follows the exploits of Alphonse von Worden, an officer traveling through the Sierra Mountains, and with each passing traveler, the interweaving stories grow stronger. One of Wojciech Haas's most acclaimed films, the surrealistic cult epic, has attracted support from Louis Buñuel, Martin Scorsese, Francis Ford Coppola, and even Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead. It's got crazy dream sequences within dream sequences, just nutty stuff, and really cool to get a nice Blu-ray of it from Yellow Veil, 235-1 from 1965. Introduction by Columbia University film professor and author Annette Insdorf. Critical assessment from Annette Insdorf. Interview with film critic Sebastian Smolinski. Essay by writer Sam Deegan. And essay by Annette Insdorf as well. So, really cool release. Haven't heard anybody talking about it on these, and definitely worth your time. One more quick one from a partner label, and that is from Decanalog, Charlie Victor Romeo. I talked about this, or maybe I haven't yet. I will in a little bit more detail, but basically it's about it's basically like based on a play that was about people recreating the latter moments of certain doomed airplane flights through the black box recordings of the pilots. It's literally just a cockpit facing the audience. They have a 3D version in here, an anaglyph version, and a 2D version. And the 3D does help pull you in, but it's riveting stuff. You have like about 6 different actors playing, I think about, is it 6 major airline incidents. And they give you like the year, the flight number, and they'll go through the whole thing, and then they'll tell you like how many survivors there were, if any. But it's crazy to watch as this dialogue is taken from these recordings and the actors are recreating it. It's riveting. It's for what it is. It's very surprising, and I just wanted to mention it. So that's Charlie Victor Romeo. Real quick, Impulse. This is a William Graffet film that came out from Grindhouse releasing this year. I think it's out of print, so you may want to grab it. Maybe not fully out of print now, but will be soon if it isn't. Spectacular 4K restoration created from rare archival elements. In-depth interviews with Graffet, Shatner live in Santa Monica. It's basically William Shatner stars as Matt Stone, a deranged gigolo who preys on rich women, unable to control his murderous psychosexual urges. Directed by William Graffet, co-starring Jennifer Bishop, Ruth Roman, Harold Oddjob, Cicada, and William Kerwin. Masterly, lovingly restored in 4K. It looks amazing. I just wanted to give a plug to Grindhouse because I love what they do, and this movie may not be everybody's cup of tea. It's a pretty crazy Shatner performance, but I know Josh Olson is a big fan of this one, and this Blu-ray is spectacular. There's even a bunch of features. There's a commentary by Graffet. They always do a wonderful job, so I really wanted to highlight a Grindhouse title. Now we'll get into some stuff that's maybe a little junkier, but just movies I like that I was happy to see at a Blu-ray. Another one from Umbrella. We have King Kong Lives. This is the odd sequel to the 1976 King Kong. This is from 86, I think. There's a great story about, I can't remember if it was the writer or the director trying to sell Dino on doing a sequel, but Dino's like, he's dead, we can't do it. And they're like, and he said, Dino, but King Kong had to have a mother. And so like that was like the beginning. Anyway, it's a crazy, there's like a baby Kong in this. It's bizarre and goofy and silly, but I'm a fan of it. And it includes a new audio commentary by King Kong, history of the movie icon, author Ray Morton, new interview with miniature supervisor David M. Jones, and new John Gillerman Lives, a video essay on director John Gillerman by Stephen Vagg. I'm also a big John Gillerman fan, so that's part of the reason I wanted to include this goofy genre film, King Kong Lives. Speaking of crazy, goofy stuff, The Abomination. This one is from Visual Vengeance. Matt Desiderios label, or he's one of the guys involved in it. There's a couple guys, and they're doing all kinds of off-the-wall stuff. This one, the only thing I could compare it to is something like maybe The Deadly Spawn, if you've seen that. This is shot on, I want to say 8mm. Deep in the heart of rural Texas, a TV evangelist exorcises a tumor from the body of a loyal worshiper who soon coughs up a growth. Unknown to her, the cancer is actually a carnivorous life form that slithers its way into her son Cody when he sleeps inside him until he's completely under its control. Now Cody must feed the beast fresh victims to keep them both alive. As the monster grows larger and larger, it threatens to feast on everyone in its path. One of the most legendary and notorious VHS releases of the video store era, Brett McCormick's Super 8 Gorefest, The Abomination enjoys its first ever release on Blu-ray with newly created bonus features and never foreseen outtakes. Visual Vengeance does a great job with these releases. If you're interested in really fringe, off-the-wall movies, check them out. Look them up on, say, Diabolic. You can see all the stuff they put out. They definitely have interesting taste, but this is one of the more renowned in cult circles movies. This is from 1986. Just a brief look at some of the crazy gore in this. I mean, it's very homemade and just nuts. It is nuts. It's one of those like holy crazy, just off the wall bonkers movies. And I never thought it would get a Blu-ray, and so I had to get it. But yeah, there's tons of interviews here and a commentary with the director and really cool stuff. And then just I've got a bunch of reissues here that I'll talk about. But really quick first, Looney Tunes Collector's Choice Volume 2. This is the second, obviously, in this set of rare cartoons. I want to say there's like 26 cartoons that I don't think have been available on Blu-rays before. And there's no features, unfortunately, on this one. But it's got a lot of really cool cartoons. I did a whole video on this, so you can go back and look at that for an in-depth, like which cartoons are included and everything. But I hope this does well. I hope they put out more. I love getting cartoons on Blu-ray. So that's Looney Tunes Volume 2, Collector's Choice. Big Night got a bare bones release from Paramount. I think it came out last year from maybe Umbrella. But it was nice to get this on Blu-ray. It's just a great movie from Campbell Scott. He and Stanley Tucci are brothers. I'm sorry, Stanley Tucci and Monk are brothers. Stanley Tucci and Tony Shalhoub are brothers, and they're trying to make this great meal for this guy that's supposed to come, and it's sort of waiting for Godot kind of thing. Anyway, great movie. Just was excited to get a Blu-ray of it, so I just want to mention it. And then in terms of some other reissues, we have 52 Pickup from Kino. This is the second Kino release of this. It's also gotten an Arrow release. It's just a great movie. John Frankenheimer, based on Elmore Leonard, one of the best Elmore Leonard adaptations. Just great scuzzy criminal stuff with Roy Scheider, sort of caught in this blackmail scheme involving John Glover, Clarence Williams III, Vanity, and it's dark stuff, and I love it. It's great. So this one includes a commentary by Steve Mitchell and Edwin Samuelson, isolated music track with composer Gary Chang, TV spots. Anyway, this is, I don't think, a new scan, but regardless, it's back in print and worth getting. Lenny came out. This is one just snuck in at the last part of the year from Imprint. This is a Bob Fosse film about the great Lenny Bruce. Dustin Hoffman plays him. It's a great performance. It's a fascinating story, and it's not been in print since like 2015, maybe. I'm trying to remember when the Twilight Time Blu-ray came out, but this is back in print. I think it's probably the same scan. Has a new commentary with Daniel Kramer and Henry Jaglom, who knew Bob Fosse and has some really cool stories. The old commentary from Nick Redman and Julie Kurgo is back, and Lenny Bruce on film, video essay. There's also an editing interview with editor Alan Heim and Trailers from Hell, but just nice to have that back in print. Secret Admirer. I just like this movie. It's just a goofy, almost like an 80s screwball comedy where a letter sent by a secret admirer to a character played by C. Thomas Howell, it gets misinterpreted, and ropes in a group of people, including Kelly Preston and Lori Loughlin, and then the parents, who are played by like Fred Ward and Cliff DeYoung, Lee Taylor Young, D. Wallace Stone, and then Casey Shamasco shows up in this. Anyway, this is a new 2K scan of the 35 interpositive. Includes an audio commentary. The last time this was on Blu-ray was from Olive Films and it had nothing. Now it has a commentary by director David Greenwalt, co-writer Jim Kauf, and associate producer Lynn Kauf, moderated by Daniel Kramer. And it's just great to have some extras and have this movie out. Again, it's a lot of fun. Goofy 80s stuff that I think is a little forgotten. And then we have It, The Terror from Beyond Space. This is also a new 2K scan of the 35mm fine grain. Very neat, enjoyable, guy in a suit, but still creepy. Movie that was definitely an influence on Alien. And has 3 different commentaries with, like, one is with Tom Weaver, Bob Burns, Larry Blemeyer, and David Schechter. Film historian Craig Beam, and film historian screenwriter Gary Girani, as well as Tidbits, Ephemera from Space featurette by Craig Beam. So nice features. This is another one that was in Olive Films, but now it's got a nice new scan. So It, The Terror from Beyond Space. And last, I just want to throw in this mention of, I talked about the French version of Sleuth in my previous video. Here is the Spanish version, which looks as good or maybe just a tiny bit better. I can't exactly tell, but definitely comparable, and has English subtitles, which the other one did not have. So you have the option to put on subtitles if you want. No extras, no essay. The French did include a booklet. This doesn't. But this is an all-region disc, just like the French disc. And just great that Sleuth got a couple releases. I had to get both to check them out. Anyway, that's it for this round of Blu-rays. Sorry I went so long. There's a lot to talk about, folks. It's been a good year. Anyway, thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.